Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we have a devblog going over some changes to some ships that are in development, and there is one standout addition here to a particular ship that is one of the oddest things Wargaming's add into the game in a moment, and we'll get to that here in a second. So if you want to read along as I read aloud, you can check out the link to the devblog down below. I will throw up any relevant images or artwork as we go through it. So let's go ahead and get on into it. So the devblog is titled Close Test 14.1 Changes to Test Ships. DevBlog says, based on testing results, we're applying changes to Eskimo, which is the Tier 8 British destroyer, the Yari, the Tier 10 Japanese heavy cruiser, the Valparaiso, which is the Pan-American Tier 9 Vanguard, the Selki, the Tier 10 British submarine, the Met, the Vizyama, and the Oregon. Those three test ships they added in that start the match at like half HP, and they have like the increased adrenaline rush. So first up is the Eskimo. The maximum HE shell damage has been increased from 2,300 to 2,350, but she's also getting a main battery reload time increase from 6 to 7.7 seconds. The Valparaiso, her maximum AP shells have been increased from 11,750 to 12,500 maximum alpha. So the Valparaiso, it's the Vanguard, but it's a secondary Vanguard, which is a very interesting concept for the Vanguard, considering how the Vanguard is, well, you know, not anywhere near a secondary ship. But hey, you know, we'll see what comes up with it. I am interested to see how the ship does finally turn out, but again, we'll see how that goes. The Selki, the Tier 10 British submarine. The torpedo launcher reload time has been reduced from 90 to 75 seconds, so she has a 75-second reload on her torpedoes right now. The Selki is a clone of the Seal. The Seal isn't ready just yet, apparently, the model, so they just have the Selki running around at the moment. And here comes the big head scratcher, the Yari. So the Yari is a Zao that is more focused on torpedoes than artillery. So they've made some changes to it. They note, we are reverting the changes to Yari which were applied in our previous devblog and are now applying additional changes. The main battery gun parameters have been changed. The reload time has been reduced from 12.4 to 9.5 seconds. The firing range was also reduced from 15.9 to 14.4 kilometers. The turret traverse time was reduced from 30 to 22.5 seconds, and the turret firing angles for the first turret was widened by 7 degrees per side. The torpedo damage was also reduced from 17,533 to 15,633. The detectability by sea was increased from 12.2 to 13 kilometers. And the fighter consumable was removed, and now she has a spotter with the following parameters. Main battery firing range, plus 10%. Dispersion of shells fired at your ship by enemies, plus 20%. That's right, this spotter consumable now somehow increases the dispersion of your enemy shells while it's up. How does it do this? I don't know. This makes little to no sense. I mean, granted, of course, in-game, obviously, it's a game, right? We have lots of things that don't really make a whole lot of sense, right? Because it is a video game at the end of the day. I mean, we have flags that are magic pieces of cloth that change parameters of your ship. Like the Charlie Kilo flag, you know, gives you 5% buff to your ship's overall HP. And before that, we had the detonation flag that somehow prevented your magazine from detonating, right? And, like, there are those things. And, of course, we have engine boosts, reload boosters, and such in-game. But, like, a fighter that increases the dispersion fired at your ship? What? How does it do that? Is it popping flares and chaff, even though we don't have, you know, guided shells or guided missiles in the game at this moment? I don't know. Is it laying a smoke screen around your ship? That would kind of make sense, right? They could be introducing some type of new smoke screen where it's like, a thinner smoke screen, you still see the ship, but it decreases the dispersion of the enemy shells. That would make some sense, but no, it's just a spotter that does spotter things, but has the inverse effect of the bungo's spotter, right? So there's that. Now, I mean, like, again, on one hand, it's a game, right? And we have all these things that, don't really make sense if you think too much about it. But, we've always had kind of a reasoning behind why things work the way that they do. Like, the spotter, when you launch it normally and you have like the bungo spotter, for example. It makes sense that, by launching an aircraft and having eyes on where your shells land, you would get, more accurate salvos in the long run, right? That makes sense. And, commander skills like the secondary battery firing skill makes sense the longer the secondary guns fire at the target, the more accurate they get. That makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, we've had things like that. We've had consumables and skills that don't make sense, but this one's a real stretch by the game's logic, I guess. I mean, like, all right, 20% dispersion debuff to the enemy shells. That's something. Again, this is in testing too, so this very well may not ever see the light of day. But it's, one more step toward that more arcadey side. And don't get me wrong, like, World of Warships has always been the more arcadey naval combat game. Like, you go play War Thunder Naval, especially War Thunder Naval back in the day, back when the fight started at like 17 kilometers and you were squinting at pixels trying to see where the enemy ships were at. That was definitely more realistic, and even in its current state, War Thunder Naval is, infinitely more realistic than World of Warships. And World of Warships, by leaning into that more arcadey side, makes the game funner, makes the naval combat more enjoyable in a brief time period, right? That makes sense in my mind, but this is like, dang, we just keep going into that more arcadey side. Again, it may never see the light of day. This is all in testing, but yeah. So they note here, the changes above are aimed at evaluating another concept for Yari. These changes, together with the new spotter plane, will shift her playstyle to be much more artillery-oriented. However, the ship still has strong torpedoes. Summed up with the reduction to her main battery firing range, this makes Yari a strong cruiser in mid to close range combat. So it seems like they are pushing the Yari away from her original design of being a ZAL but more torpedo boat focused to being a ZAL but closer combat mid-range. ZAL is very much a mid to long range ship. Her armor is not all that great. If you get in close with the ZAL, you definitely want to be playing it, from the longer side. So, mid to close range ZAL sounds interesting. Her armor, I don't know what they're going to do about that. They would definitely have to thicken that up or give her some type of improved heal to really make her a considerable threat at close range. I mean, I guess, yes, she does have the new spotter that decreases the accuracy of the enemy shells that get fired at you for 60 seconds, but I mean, still, if you've never played a ZAL or shot at a ZAL, you don't really need to land all your shells on a ZAL to really make the ZAL's life miserable. So, interesting decision by Wargaming here, introducing a plane that decreases the dispersion of the enemy shells. That's wild. So, I guess we'll see if that pans out. Alright, so the Mets, the Vijama, and the Oregon also all got changes as well. The Mets, the Vijama, and the Oregon, these are ships that are supposedly being used in a new temporary battle, but they're testing them in random battles. So, yeah, they're for a new temporary event, but they're testing them in random. So, that's something. These are those ships. You might have seen some of them. I've seen quite a few Oregons. Oregon is a tier 10 Georgia, and they start the match with half of their HP. And they have this improved adrenaline rush on top of normal adrenaline rush. So these are ships that, according to Wargaming, like to live life on the edge. So more aggressive ships, I guess you could say. So what have they done? The Mets, the tier 8 French boy, the main battery reload was increased from 27 to 30 seconds. The burst fire reload time was also increased from 36 to 40 seconds. The Vijama, which is a tier 9, I believe this is actually a Borodino in a tier 9 cruiser slot. The main battery reload time was increased from 29 to 33 seconds, and the burst fire reload was increased from 40 to 45 seconds. And then the Oregon, which again, this is a Georgia up-tiered to Tier 9. The main battery reload time was increased from 25 to 27 seconds, and the burst fire reload time was increased from 35 to 38 seconds. So keep in mind, too, with these base reload times and such, this is base if they're at full HP. Again, these ships spawn in at like 2/3 HP or half HP. They have an improved baked-in adrenaline rush, and you can have adrenaline rush on top of that as well. So these guys' reloads are probably well under, I don't want to say half, probably a little bit more than half of what we're seeing right now. I don't know what the, improved AR rate is, but I'm guessing with that stacked on top of adrenaline rush, you're probably looking at really like half of these base reload times. So interesting change. I have seen a few Oregons in battle. They tend to, from what I've seen, die early. So yeah, I think I've seen one or two make it to like over the halfway mark. But again, that's just from what I've seen over here in the North American server when I am out and about in matches. So Yari, very interesting changes to the Yari with the spotter that somehow makes the enemy gunners less accurate. That's the big thing from this DevBlog, and what I'll be looking at when she does eventually come out. If that does make it into full release, that will be most interesting. Then, of course, the question is, what are they going to do with it after that, right? Like, is it just going to be a Yari thing, or are they slowly going to start to introduce it to other ships? So, yeah, might be an interesting way to spruce up the Japanese heavy cruiser line. Those guys, even though the Zao has gotten a few buffs here and there, they aren't exactly, what they used to be back in the day, so maybe. But we'll see what happens with them in the future, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day, wonderful rest of your day as well. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.